Gonondo, which means the big one,
yeah,
who controls everything. So Gunonga, Gonondo. I'm actually enjoying this. Some nice phonetics, the etymology.
Yeah. So, and we belong to the clan that is Gitunga.
Gitunga.
So the Gitunga, and these are things that our children must learn. The Gitunga means the baskets.
The basket. Now in Shona, Kutunga is weaving.
Exactly. So Gutunga is also
Kutunga
weaving.
Is weaving. So
weaving, exactly
Gutunga,
the same. So when you are weaving,
yeah,
so you put together something, the basket, yeah, that will keep the food, yes, for everyone to come and eat. So that was the Gitunga.
Wow.
And henceforth, I lived until the age of 5 and was flown overseas in France for some years, I would say 12 years.
In France?
In France, to my aunt.
That's you're 17 years old now, you're in France.
Yes. I was in Lille. In Lille, and got to return age 16 to Congo in grade 11. And I fell in love with my country, which I left when I was 5. And also, I didn't want to return. I went for holidays and I said, I'm going to stay here. This is my land. This is my root.
Your name was calling you.
Exactly.
That you didn't buy Lily. You bought Congo.
I bought Congo. And also, when we reflect on Marcus Garvey, when he says that people who do not know their history, who do not know their culture, who do not know where they come from, they are just as if they were, it's a tree without roots. Yeah. And I usually compare to that and I say, would you ever see a bird without wings flying?
Impossible.
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 So if we go deeper, it means that all this, when reflecting on Marcus Garvey, this is our riddle, this is the wisdom that we need to transfer to our children, to the next generation, so that they understand who we are. Basically, our history, we have been erased from our history.
Wow.
Today, we learn about the King, Louis XVI.
Yes.
We learn about Leopold II.
Yeah.
We have studied about them.
In our own countries.
In our own countries, in our own soil. We have names
of streets, and cities,
that buildings we do not appropriate and we do not understand what they mean. So Harry Smith, what does Harry Smith means
to a South African?
To a South African.
Bloemfontein.
Pretoria. So names are very important. For instance, in terms of our children when they are born, when they are twins, which we call in our language Mapasa.
In Shona it's Mapasha.
You see?
Yeah. Mapasa, Mapasha.
It's languages are in
Bantu. That's Bantu. It's amazing that people would see so many differences. But when I'm hearing you talking, I'm hearing so many similarities.
But that's the same. I remember you say you are Shona. Karangal. And the Kalanga in Botswana.
Same, what's up?
And the Kalanga in DRC. That's the same. And basically, if you look at the Shona and basically everything in Zimbabwe, how were the houses built?
Roundavels with patterns on them, and the fireplace.
And why is a house round and circle and not rectangular or a square?
The worldview, the connectivity, the warmth.
The warmth,
the wholeness, the wellness, the holistic.
The togetherness.
Yes.
And also at the same time, when we go deeper into history, we would realize that in fact, when they saw the ecosystem, and if that ecosystem were to have an earthquake, if the house is in a square,
it will crack.
It will crack. But a house in circle would not
survive.
Would survive.
Wow.
So this is one of the reasons that our ancestors
actually they were scientifically correct.
Well, they learned so many things. You speak about the pyramids and all these. It's science on itself that today we say no, it is Caucasian. No, it's not Caucasian.
I saw a write-up the other day, actually, one of the British historians commenting about the Great Zimbabwe ruins. And in their historical submission, they say it must not be admitted that the Zimbabweans, in terms of the Karangas or the Munemtapa, built the Great Zimbabwe ruins, semicolon. Because by admitting that they built the Great Zimbabwe ruins, the British are admitting that the civilization of the Karangas is superior to that of Britain. And hence they come to Zimbabwe and they destroy Zimbabwe, which was the Great Zimbabwe. And they go to Britain and start up the Great Britain. And you wonder, great in what? When actually you have stolen greatness. But I'm interested in this beautiful little piece. I read a little bit about Patrice Lumumba and having to meet a son of one of the martyrs within the greater Lumumba era. And I know Lumumba has been a great inspiration to the greater African population and beyond in terms of the Pan-African concept. Maybe what one or two issues can be just a reflection. What were the key causes? Why did they kill Lumumba? And how did your father get caught up in that massacre?
Well, I would say that Lumumba was killed. That's my leader. That's my role model. And if anything today, I think as Africans, young people, we don't have role models any longer. Mm-hmm. So we don't have father figure. And Lumumba is one of the greatest thinker in terms of African independence. I'm not talking about the physical independence, but I'm thinking about the mental independence. Because we are slaves. And Lumumba refused
to become a slave.
To become a slave of the colonizers.
Who assisted in the death of Lumumba?
Well, many of them assisted. We say the Belgian, we say the CIA, we say the French intelligence service, the British intelligence service. And the killing of Lumumba continues until today, because every single day that passes, an African child in the Congo is being killed. We have 12 million people killed since 1994 with the so-called Rwandan genocides. But let's come back to it might be another theme and topic of debate for another day. But Lumumba is this genius who thought of gathering all the Congolese together toward a common cause, an indivisible Congo, the unity of the Congolese people. Hence, he also had a program for the emancipation, philosophical emancipation, economical emancipation.
He was vigorous. He was vigorous. The impact of his thoughts continue to live way after he is gone.
He might have been a bad leader, we would not know. But the fact that you catch somebody at that level,
at that early age, before they could mature into
in his philosophy, in his thinking, then you give us the benefit of the doubt, saying that it was so great that you saw the star shining. Remember,
switch it off before it could go very far.
Very far.
It could be very interesting, actually, to note, and if I could just extrapolate on that, that with the amount of philosophical understanding that Lumumba had, it pains my heart that of all the liberation and freedom that Africa can talk about, Congo has been at war from the first time I knew Congo to date. And it looks like that war is not going to end because of various international, regional, political, economic interests that are quite diverse and complex. You're flying over Congo, you see strips of aeroplanes and airstrips, big Boeings landing into those jungles, grabbing minerals, flying out, some to Hong Kong, some to China, some to Europe, some to America. In your own assessment of the greater space of Congo and the plight that it has found itself in continuously for decades on end, what remains is some of the key drivers of the unsettlement in Congo? And who stands to benefit from the Congo's plight when 12 million people have died so far, according to your statistics, from the 1994 to date? What exactly is happening? Tell us some bit of local politics, give me regional politics, give me a bit of the international politics, and how all these are cascading and benefiting from the death of the Congolese people.
Well, I would say that we need to go back into 1885. And if we go to 1885, the so-called Berlin Conference, but which was called inside the Congo Conference.
All right.
Because it wasn't meant to split Africa as such, but it was meant to control Congo.
Congo was the subject.
Congo was the subject.
But they said, while we are on it, let's divide the whole continent.
Yes.
But initially, it was a war over the resources of Congo.
Because again, it is very important that we unpack history here. Belgium did not exist until 1831.
Hold it right there. When you come back after the break, we want to unpack the Congo, quote-unquote, Berlin Conference, the Congo Conference, fighting over the resources of Africa. Bunch of white men sit on a table and they cut up Africa like a piece of chicken, deciding who takes the drumstick and who takes the wings and everything else. And here we are, still upholding the legacy of colonialism. In studio with me, Gisumba Bwasa, to be unpacking this story. Don't go away, we'll be back right after the break.
Hello. Being a legal practitioner in South Africa in these challenging times demands lawyers that will help clients beyond legal issues. The ever-changing demands in commerce and tourism require lawyers who have sound and clear business and commercial knowledge, and that's where MB Chabangu Incorporated comes in. Our business, mining, tourism, health, labor, and economic knowledge encapsulated with law and litigation experience gives us an advantage in the legal sphere. Our experience in assisting businesses, government, and various industries with their needs puts us amongst the many progressive and striving law firms in South Africa. Now, to contact our attorneys for assistance with any of the mentioned fields and others, please call us on 012-341-4187 or send us an email on admin@chabangu.co.za. MB Chabangu Incorporated, where problems meet solutions.
Experience the extraordinary.
Feeling is there that you're doing something special.
Have you lost it? Move!
Stop being so dramatic, Mira.
Challenge your ordinary.
Why don't you start a dance class?
Experience the extraordinary with StarSat.
Join me, Mpumalanga, on Inside Out on Galaxy. This is a show that helps individuals on how to deal with serious matters from the inside out. This is to help remedy the effects that depression seems to have in our homes, relationships, individuals, and even our communities at large. We will look at some of the devastating effects that depression has on media personalities, prominent people, and our own brothers and sisters. Some of our loved celebrities and musicians having had to go through depression and fought a losing battle. How can this be prevented and minimized? And what causes this? From the inside out.
Welcome back again. Welcome one more time here live with Maponga J, our guest for tonight, Gisumba Bwasa, all the way from Congo, living here in South Africa. He was unpacking for us the greater space of the Congo Conference, commonly known as the Berlin Conference. And you were talking about
1830.
1830.
Yeah.
We're in Berlin.
I prefer to speak about where Belgium came from.
Yes.
Because 1885, it's actually 50 years after the creation of Belgium. And when Belgium was created, it is an understanding between the French and the British agreed together to pull up a piece of Holland and make it become Belgium.
Okay.
Then they picks a prince who is German, Leopold I, the father of Leopold II,
The second.
to make him become the king of
Belgium.
So there's a bit of turmoil and fighting back and forth, but they hold on to that. But when we speak again about the British and the French, we must understand that we are in the presence of one family. The family of the Queen Victoria, who was considered as the mother of Europe, and if not the mother of the world, because with the colonies that they were all gathering.
Yes. Canada, Australia,
yes, and they were,
and all the British
married to a German prince, Franz Joseph. So basically, when we come to the Berlin Conference,
two families met.
Two families, three countries met, the strong powers, Spain and everything. So it's 14 families that are gathered there to split a cake.
The African cake.
The African cake. But within the African cake, they have a portion called Congo, which will become what they call the independent state of the Congo. So Congo was never a colony of anybody. They gave it to a king to look after, so that you come, you do your business, you take what you have to take, and you go without developing. And until today, that is the status of the Congo.
Legacy.
So that's the heritage of the Congo.
Wow.
So the suffering, King Leopold to himself killed 15 million people.
No.
It has never been called a genocide. And today we still do not have a genocide in
and
the
all this international court justice and what. No one wants to talk about. I heard the other day that the CIA has actually banned ICC and put them on sanctions for investigating Americans' mischief on international.
There's an irony, Babamkulu Maponga. There's an irony because themselves, the US, are not part of the ICC. They never signed.
How do you sanction someone who we are not part of? Wait.
Understand, they never signed the Roma status.
Yes.
So it's really embarrassing for us Africans.
But it says something. It says who sponsors it.
Well,
in as much as they are not a signature on paper, but the fact that when they sanction it, actually, when they cough rather, the ICC cages are cold. The question is, whose money is ICC running on? The International Court Justice System?
Well, it's our own money because, again, that's also the other irony. It is the African money that goes and pumps Europe, the US, and then it comes to us back in the form of aid and assistance.
Yes.
And the dilemma about it, what is sad about it, it's our African leaders. They just go begging to get it.
How do you beg your own money? I mean, the other day, maybe I might ask you on your understanding and your 2 cents worth on our president in Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, actually giving land back to the white farmers.
Well, you know, I think Africans, we need to be smart enough to understand that whatever is in this world belongs to us. Because we're talking about African heritage. Where is our arts, artifacts, everything that we created is sitting in European museums. And we go and we pay a lot of money there.
Just to go and see it again.
Just
and
to
by the way,
see.
when they come here, they say this is demonic, this is satanic. And you get to the same museum, and those idols and etc. are actually the trophies in the museums. How interesting that Christians can condemn their own culture at home, and then they are prepared when they're in Paris, they are in London, they are prepared to pay £100 and go and see the demons from their own village.
But that's actually the irony about it, because they want us to be spiritually empty. And as far as a person is spiritually empty, he can't think for himself. Same applies to education. How do I go, and I was discussing with a few of my students today, how do I study Shakespeare? I study Shakespeare. What is the relationship between I and Shakespeare?
If music be the food of love, play on, give me excess of it, that's suffering.
there's
and all
no
this
connection.
flamboyancy around English language. While we are on that, we might as well just get started right there. A bit of your educational background and your training.
Well, as I said earlier on, I lived overseas for quite some time. I speak French more or less like a French person.
Okay. You can greet our fellow French audience out there.
Bonsoir à tous et je vous souhaite la bienvenue sur cette plateforme et surtout avec notre sage, l'évêque Maponga.
Hey, did you hear my greetings in French? They call me Levi. Levi Maponga. Levi Maponga. That's elder. Pleasant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bishop Maponga.
All right.
Voilà.
Thank you.
Donc, so, see.
Education. Yeah.
So I came back in 1982 in Africa, and I fell in love with my Africa. I used to go in the village rather than stay in the capital, Kinshasa. I'll spend 6 months in my village, 6 months in Kinshasa, trying to see how better I could develop my kinsmen in the village. So I went to seminaries, Kinzambi. It is one of the best. Kinzambi. Nzambi means gods.
Okay.
It used to be called Saint Pierre Canisius. So I spent a few times there, but I could not adapt because I came from overseas and the system was quite different. So I went from one school to the other, then got my matric, and thereafter went to university. I was supposed to go back overseas, but I refused to go back overseas.
Stayed at home.
I prefer to stay home. I had a scholarship and a bursary to the University of Atlanta, one in my city, Lille,
Back in Paris, back in France.
And I said, no, I prefer to study in the Congo. During Mobutu time, it was quite challenging, quite difficult. When Mobutu was there, it was a dictatorship. You can't speak much, but as a student who grew up overseas, I was actually openly speaking against Mobutu regime and got some times in cells and jails, but defending the students.
A bit of spanking here and there.
Yeah, Shimbok and so on and so forth. But I did education. I wanted to become a lawyer, so I had 3 years in the Faculty of Law.
Yes.
Then I moved back to education, because with education I could study and work at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
So that's what I did, and I did American literature.
American literature.
Yeah, and African literature. So.
So you're a literature man.
Yes.
I think, guys, I just found myself a new editor for some of my books here, and it would be nice to translate maybe one or two of these books into French,
No, well,
so that we can reach a much wider audience. And Frantz Fanon remains one of my favorite.
He's also my favorite
writers, and
the liberation of the mind and so on. And so
the black faces, white masks. Yeah. My word.
The red shirts of the earth.
Anyone who has not read that book and you are an African, man, I want to challenge you during this holiday, take some time and go through how Europe underdeveloped Africa. Is this on mine?
Well, this is my copy. This is the book I'm recommending to most of the people to read.
We have a book that is being recommended. We have spoken one, which are the works of Frantz Fanon, whichever copy you can find, whether it is the wretched
of the earth,
or white masks, black faces, anything by Frantz Fanon, read. We have another one here. Actually, I had this one in a soft copy, in an e-copy. But the title is How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Take us through, just a quick review of this one here.
Well, Walter Hodney is talking about how actually the Caucasian emptied Africa with all these isms. Isms. The socialism, Catholicism, imperialism,
Adventism,
and
Islamism, whatever all these isms.
We all abide to that, and when we abide to that, we think it's what a soporific terminology that I must actually copy. And
Marxism.
And we copy all this blindly without knowing that actually we are enriching the other self, who actually also originates
from ourselves, from Africa. Just taken, adapted, and they put ribbons on Ubuntu, and they rewrite it and say it's Marxism. But you look at it very carefully, it is actually an adulterated version.
Yeah, so it's solidarity, our African solidarity, which we call Ubuntu.
In Congo language, what do you call it? Ubuntu.
Well, Ubuntu, it's Ubuntu that's love itself.
It contains everything in there.
It contains everything.
Let's go into, I want us to take maybe a small little shot left into education. Your review of Eurocentric education. Your review of Romanism with its Christian education. Your review of Eurocentrism with its economic policies. And how this format of education, from cradle to university, how it has shaped the politician, how it has shaped the common person on the street. When you look at the impact of education, our grandmothers said, go to school and study. But you find out that by the time you are educated, are you still an African or you've become something else? How has education impacted the African mind?
Well, I was actually reflecting on it in this note, and I said, we are an hybrid person. As African, we are hybrid. And I would say we are mulattoes.
Mulattoes.
Mixed people. So if anybody could understand, I've got a white mind in a black skin. In such a way that when I reflect, look, we are talking here, we are talking a European language. Why wouldn't we be discussing in an African language?
Speak in your own Congo language there.
But then again,
tell me, Gisumba, express this. There's someone out there who can hear your mother tongue, just 2 lines. What must we do best as African people? Answer me in your traditional language.
In my traditional language. Bet fetu kuyobila masa yampa, sam betu kuvanda bantu ina yake na luswasonu ya kusala makambu ya mbote sam na bampangi na betu.
Ngatidzokerei kumashubuliro edu kwa zvakatangira kuna muzvinachiro akaona kunokora pamusoro tombeta chigume kuri yakwafa mhendo vulimo dzatinadzo pano. I could get excited in my shoulder.
Basically what I'm saying that
but I hear you.
It is important that we go back to our rivers.
Yes.
We speak to our rivers.
Wow.
We speak to our trees.
Wow.
We speak to
our mountains.
Our mountains, because that is our spirituality.
Wow.
And once we speak to the trees, the rivers, the stars, then we are again
connected
human beings.
Wow.
Because what we are missing today in our education, it is our riddles.
Our proverbs.
Our proverbs.
Our idioms.
Our idioms.
Our folklore stories.
Our songs. Our drums, our beats. Today we speak about the rumba, we speak about the salsa, but all these originated from Africa.
Bring the drum and the kudu horn.
And then let's make our judiciary system under the palava tree. I do not fancy to be in a court sitting there being judged in a language that I do not understand.
With the constitution that I don't understand.
So the system, the educational system itself needs to be changed. We need to bring African educationalists to sit on the table and say, okay, fine, we are living in a Caucasian world. This is a modern world. How do we balance what was written and our oral tradition?
And actually, the challenge for the modern student is to sit with the adults. I mean, you've been to school, you've studied economics, you've studied languages, you've studied history. Now, there, you proliferated, there's a piece of certificate, you are now educated. But imagine if 5,000 to 10,000 students would walk out of the university, and instead of them going to look for employment, they would actually walk back into the community and say, as a historian, let me gather indigenous history. As a literary writer, let me gather the folklore stories. As a geography, as medicine, let me gather the indigenous herbs. As a fashion specialist, let me gather.
You're talking about indigenous herbs. We're talking about COVID-19.
Yeah.
I was saying at the beginning, where have you gathered all these traditional herbalists? You call them herbalists, but they are scientists.
The scientists, they are pharmacists.
They are pharmacists. You call them
chemist majors.
Can you find us a cure that would actually cure and treat COVID-19?
Just imagine, this is off the record. If the 500 billion South Africa collected as a donation for COVID, if that was put into, let's find a cure for COVID, 500 billion. You know how much 500 billion?
Well, let's tell you, I don't even go to 5 behind.
You just see stars. Even if we could take 10% of that or 20% of that and invest it directly into solution. And again, without being too lambastic or lambasting our leaders. And I think there's a shortfall of brain work. There's a wavelength we're missing where we become more consumers and we're not interested in actually becoming solution finders. Because a little bit of that, just imagine, just even 100 million, not billion, 100 million, put into an indigenous solution, we would have been very far by now.
Well, but you're saying that there's a vacuum between the leadership and the masses, but it is created with purpose. Remember, Solzhenitsyn, a Russian philosopher, says that people are better governed or ruled when they are hungry.
Wow.
So the hunger is not only for food, but the hunger is also for education. The hunger is for the basic needs.
Wow.
The hunger is for health. The hunger is for anything.
Everything.
So
keep the gap.
Yeah. So an African is thirsty and he wants to quench his thirst. Let me bring you back to my village. When in my village, and it might be your village as well, these old Africans sees that he need alcohol and he's thirsty. And then there's a palm tree. Because how did they come to palm wine or to Mkomboti? It's because Jean Piaget, who defined intelligence, he says that a person is only intelligent if he can find solution to the issues that pertains to his life.
There you go. There you go.
So my great-great-father or uncle who lives in the village says, I'm thirsty, let me create the Lukamba. Lukamba is that cord that is going to catch and create and pull and put on the palm tree and climb the palm tree.
And cut the top of the palm tree.
And then
harvest the palm oil, palm wine.
Palm wine, and he's got his alcohol. He comes and shares with his community. Which brings us back to the Ubuntu we are talking about, because we need to talk about African tradition and African values. He's not going to drink that palm wine alone.
Who can enjoy palm wine by himself?
Impossible.
You mean you have
nuts?
It's nice. In my village, you say it's nice when we are pulling it away from each other.
And we share it with the same.
We share it together.
And there was no germs or whatever. Today, my son, you see, I brought my son here because, again, I want to transfer the cosmogony or the philosophy of the banana tree. We've been going on in several things, but I'm going to finish with the palm wine. So this palm wine we share as Ubuntu, and again, the person will come to visit the elder, will bring also his calabash.
Yes.
We have a stadium calabash, but they don't understand the calabash, what it represents. So when he brings his calabash, in terms of the Ubuntu, not the lips Ubuntu that people talk about.
The practice.
it used to be that when I cross your farm and I see your farm, I eat from your farm. I'm a traveler.
Yes.
Once I have eaten from your farm, I need to also harvest and live and say, I passed by your farm. And that was the meaning of Ubuntu. Yes, you fed me, but in return, instead of you coming and cutting the banana, these are the bananas. So you don't need to sweat for it.
And imagine if we're doing this economically, that one man goes up the tree and cuts up the palm wine and has a calabash, and he sits around to share with everybody. Just take that same concept and let's move it to an economic environment. Imagine if the one who has become a billionaire could have the mindset of the calabash. Imagine if the white people could behave like strangers. Now that you have eaten in our fields, what are you leaving behind? And for me, these principles are so intrinsic, yet they're so much misunderstood. When we come back after the break with Gisumba Bwasa, we shall be exploring yet some other issues around the greater South African philosophy and how as Africans we are living together in building this nation. We are not complaining today, we are bringing solutions to the greater African people. Don't go away. We'll be back after the break. Are you there, Madot?
Tech Talk brought to you by Tamani Technologies and Systems. Tamani Technologies and Systems takes leadership in fourth industrial revolution. The whole world is facing a transformation. The revolution will be developed into the following stages: digitization, cyber security, Internet of Things, managed services, document management, and business applications. We provide business transformation and ICT solutions with presence in 13 African countries and 2 European countries. We are your leading partner in integrated platform providers, innovation leaders, standalone products, and innovation pace setters. Tamani Technologies and Systems, delivering value across continents.
Welcome back again here on your program Sankofa. We are sitting with an elder here, Gisumba Bwasa from Congo. Congo, our homeland, right there in Embo where it all started. We're picking his brains, taking us through the beautiful month of September. And for all of us Africans out there, Al Keblam, wherever you are, this is the beginning of the year. September is when we begin our year. Wherever you are, find a kudu horn somewhere in your house there, blow the horn into the sky and announce the beginning of the new year. I want to sit down with an elder here and pick up his brain on African values. What are those African values and how are we interpreting them in our present cosmopolitan cities?
Well, we have spoken about Ubuntu. I'm not going to come back, although it's a lot
you cannot
to unpack about it.
You can't finish that one.
It's a thorny subject.
Yeah.
However, we'll talk about Lobola. Lobola, when you're talking about this beginning of the year, it's also how you wed, how you get married, not only to the beautiful woman but to the earth, how you get married to the nature. And there's a poem that I love in French, Je ne veux plus aller à leur école, Guy Tyrolien, who's speaking, a child is saying, I don't want to go to their school any longer. I want to be going to the school where my feet I'm not wearing shoes. And it has got a connection
to the ground.
To the ground. And that is what we have lost as African values.
Learning while our feet are on the ground.
On the ground.
That's deep.
Not
sitting on chairs.
Yeah.
Put your feet on the ground.
On the ground.
And
have
then
that
learn.
connection.
And then learn.
And yeah. Then the second thing that I also refer to as a wedding with a woman and the earth and the soil. African, as I said earlier on, we always have our hands like this.
Begging.
begging, instead of having their hands digging.
And working. I have a proverb which I have coined up that says every African man must have two wives. The first wife is land, and the second wife is the one that you have children with. And it is illegal to make wife number 2 pregnant when wife number 1 still is not pregnant. Then because when wife number 1 is pregnant, which is the ground, she will be able to feed
the children, the offsprings that are in the house.
Like build up on this concept of marrying the land.
Exactly, that's what we need to do. I would say if I share my experience here, and sometimes when I met the current president, Felix Tshisekedi, some 2 years or 3 years ago before he became president, I asked him 3 questions, and it is very critical and important for people to understand that as Congolese, we do not have an identity card, which is fine. If I were an African, I can go anywhere without an identity card. That's fine. So I'm accepted by anyone. But again, it creates a problem in the modern world. And I told them, I went back to my country as young as 23 or 25 years old. I helped my community build itself. Today, nobody can pick up his phone and tell me we are hungry, because I'll tell him there are cassava crops, there are cows,
there's yam, the goats and everything.
There's an hospital, you go there for free. I spent 25 years of my life
building that community.
The only thing I was bringing was the water, but then I had to flee because they bombed my house.
There's a document I worked on some time ago, Adopt a Village. It was a small little concept where you're telling the educated and the African in diaspora that it's useless to be buying brands in the Western world, showing you've bought a Rolls Royce, you're in Britain, you've bought yourself a flat, and etc. How about if you can adopt just your village? And by adopting a village, put those resources within your community and allow the community to become self-sustainable.
Well, but that's what we are missing, because we, as I said, we are hybrid. Our mind is so colonized and westernized that we don't understand that, first of all, we need to recapture our own identity.
Wow.
We have lost our identity. We must not.
What are some of the key critical African values that you think we must? I heard you've mentioned Ubuntu. I love the Lobola concept. You need to marry your ground. I love the third one. Learn with your feet on the ground. I'm actually picking up. You see, I'm a good student, yeah? I'm a good student. I'm actually following up very closely. I'm learning.
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
The African and black person is actually in their values his own self-esteem. We tend to say that these people are better than we are. The respect of oneself and the community. And that brings us to all these issues about xenophobia. And when they say xenophobia, people, as South African must hear me right here. The xenophobia is not only in South Africa, because one of the reasons for which we have fled our country is because of xenophobia. The fear of accepting the other one. So, if we speak about xenophobia, it is very important that we also reflect to our leaders in the
throughout the African space. But someone was correcting me on the xenophobia story, but they said it's Afrophobia. Because when you make it xenophobia, it's fear of the other. If we were really practicing xenophobia, then the Chinese and the British and the white community that is in Africa, those are the most diverse. They were the first ones to be butchered, killed, and excluded in the community. But unfortunately, we find that Africans, we are not touching the Chinese, we are not touching the Europeans, we are touching each other. So someone was saying, no, we need to classify this thing of xenophobia. Let's not over-exaggerate xenophobia over Afro or Afrophobia, where it is the education that says, as an African, don't trust a fellow African.
Then let's say blackophobia then.
Blackophobia. We're going to become black on black violence.
Exactly. Because
the Chinese mall keep on running.
Because Afrophobia, then you've got the Egyptian, you've got the Moroccan, and you're not going to...
The Somali shops are being banned in Soweto, for example. But then you find that the China mall is still running. Then you wonder, what is xenophobia here? Because...
Well, but that's the divide and rule mentality that we were bequeathed with. That's one. Secondly, you have a child and 10 children together around a piece of cake. One child would take the 9 pieces of cake, and I'm actually quoting from a fellow of Dr. Edward Mitole, whom we have a robust debate together. So a child takes 9 pieces of cake and leaves one piece of cake for 9 children.
And then says to the 9 children,
share
that piece.
What do you expect?
We fight.
We'll fight.
So
that's where we have your Afrophobia, xenophobia, or whatever you call it.
We're fighting over crumbs.
Exactly. So the other African value that we can talk about is pride in one's cultural heritage.
This is a culture. This is apparently we are given 1 month a year to become Africans. That's where we are told now, okay, just for this month, you can dress up like an African, eat African foods. By October, you must be back in your jacket and ties.
No, I do celebrate my Africa every single time. Even in my school, they have given me that opportunity to speak about Africa. That's why in grade 11, they did incorporate or integrated what we call African philosophy, which I call Ubuntu philosophy.
Ubuntu philosophy.
And I tackle any issue with my learners in grade 11. We tackle about African literature. Why do I have to study Shakespeare and not Chinua Achebe, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, or Wole Soyinka, or Mudimbe? The people hardly know.
Ongozi,
Christopher Kibo. So why can't I study those people? And I have to study John Donne or Ernest Hemingway or Fitzgerald, so to say, or Victor Hugo or Baudelaire. No, I need to study Jack Habemananjara.
Learn more about ourselves. Education must be personal reflection.
And it is very important. One of the course and the workshop that I ran with my student grade 8 and 9 was integrated studies, where I asked them to do something that I call personally storytelling. Because remember, as African, we had
storytelling, folklore story. I have exactly 2 minutes left. 1 minute for you. Give me a word for the Africa Union in 1 sentence. What do you want to tell the world out there about Africa? What do you want them to do for Africa?
I want them to be disbanded first and have new blood in the African Union.
Close Africa Union ever start?
Yes.
One word you can give for the South African community about you as a Congolese living in South Africa.
Let's love one another and the world will be a better place for all.
Wow, they say African culture is about eating the chicken feet, but no, they forget one thing. We did not only eat the chicken feet, we ate the whole chicken. We ate the whole chicken. Half a loaf is better than nothing, that's a stupid proverb. Why have half a loaf? We can actually have the full loaf of bread. There you have it on yourself. You have your entire culture in your hands and no one will appreciate it until you appreciate it yourself. With me here, Gisumba Mavu. And thank you very much for spending some time with us. Your host on the show, Maponga GH Garamboko Garamashamba Huda Chira Nawana Wanji. Makumba Manang Mesende Shano Manachiramba Kusesra Mponango Kubawane Mashakumagaro. Chibwe chitedza chinotedzera vari kuri vari pedo vanotamba nacho mutambo uri paro ware vanachigara mahwe matanda anovora. Until we see you again, have yourself a wonderful evening and a beautiful weekend. Don't do what I wouldn't do, but if you decide to do it better.